Whew, Jesus. This game is hard. It's really damn difficult. From the outside, it looked to me like Beat Saber, but without the VR and the lightsabers. And to be fair, it's not far off. Soundslide involves moving your little UFO along the tracks in time with the beat to get the highest score. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. The game is fast, very fast. It doesn't give you a lot of time to react, and it's very hard to see what's coming and where you can move next, especially for the areas where you tilt around the edge when moving platforms. That's without the restrictors on. This is where the skill comes in, and having that reaction time in there quick is definitely a great help. However, to say you move your UFO in time with the beat is a little bit generous. I have to admit, the hardest thing about this game is that matching the beat actually doesn't work for about 80% of it. There are times when you have to rely on it, and it just about does the job. The rest of the time, clicking to the beat doesn't always do the job, and you end up bumping into fronts of platforms because you're slightly delayed, even when you're hitting the button exactly on time. Also, the platforms can match up to the drum beat and then all of a sudden work with the melody instead. So you're not matching to the beat because there were times when you were following the consistent drum beat, then the drum beat stayed consistent and the melody went off on one, and now you were following that instead. That made it really tricky to work with the music because your source of focus kept switching unannounced. I don't know if the delay was caused by lag or by the game being too fast, but either way, the delay mixed with the part of the track that you were following changing every 5 seconds made the game very, very hard. I saw someone in the Steam comments say that any delay is caused by the computer system it's run on, not the game, but it's a fairly common issue it seems. It's either the input or the music output, but I'm not really sure. It is slightly nicer to you in that it will just bounce you back off a few platforms if you move late, but you don't control where this bounce takes you, which is indiscriminately left. No matter what you do, the bounce always takes you left if there's an option. This can be super annoying at splits if you're aiming right and get bounced left without realising. The Brazil level was absolutely awful for this. The game has 4 levels, but don't worry, there is replayability in beating your own score and also in trying the game with one or both of the restrictors on and playing it faster or in a different mode. I tried the game on 125% speed and then had a go on 150%, and I can't tell you how painful it was. My brain couldn't cope, my hands wouldn't respond, and I felt like screaming as I smashed my fingers madly into the buttons. I had a go at the Brazil and China levels on 150% and I didn't get far at all. The India level has a few bits where you just press mad fast and well, I didn't even want to try that. I was interested in what that horrible bit at the end of the Brazil level would be like in 150%, but I'm also sort of glad I didn't make it there. The rules of keeping with the beat go out the window even more on 150%, and really you just have to smash keys until you make a checkpoint. There are 3 modes you can play on, as said. One is more of a training level to get you used to it, the other is the normal mode, and the third is flawless, which has no checkpoints, and if you make a mistake right at the end, you're straight back to the start. I managed to complete it on the Egypt level, only after pulling the worst ever victory cheer that's not a real victory cheer because the level isn't over yet. I was so happy I got past a bit, raised my hands in joy, and promptly died because it wasn't the end. Screw me for being happy, right? You have to know the level well before you stand a chance at this, and the same goes for the restrictors. The restrictors are that you can cover all of the tracks at a distance from you, or you can cover all of the tracks close to you. That means that you play with a predictive or a reactive playstyle. For one, you know what's coming, and have to remember because it disappears when it reaches you. The other, it pops up when it reaches you out of nowhere. If you think you're that clever and well versed with the level, you can put both of them on, in which case you see none of the tracks and you just have to remember where you're meant to be. There's a little shiny thing that hints at where they'll be, but it's not a lot to go off at all. All of these modes and speeds and restrictors combine into score multipliers, so the faster and more difficult you make it, the better a score you get. If you finish it, of course. I would pay to see anyone complete all the levels on 150%. In fact, there's an achievement where you have to complete a level at 150% speed, with both near and far lanes disabled, on flawless mode. If anyone can do that and provide me video evidence, I'll give you 20 quid. Speaking of score though, you get bonuses for perfect moves. You get rated points each move from 5 up to 30, which is the max. And I've tried my best to figure out how you get 30 points. Because sometimes moving directly on the beat is too early, or too late, and you die. But sometimes it gets you full points. Perfectly feasible and on the beat movements can slap you with 5 points just as easily as 15, and to be honest, when everything's coming at you at Mach 5, the scoring system becomes the least of your worries. The thing is, with any game like this, the real trick to being good at it is repetition and muscle memory. It's the key to any kind of coordination between timing with music and button pressing. It's almost impossible to actually be able to react for a lot of the parts of these levels. You don't beat the game by just responding to what gets thrown at you first time because it's too hard to distinguish and it comes at you too fast. Especially when you turn up the speed. No human can react to that. The only way you'll ever get full points is by doing multiple attempts, and as said by that point, it's more muscle memory than anything else. Does that make the game any less satisfying though? Absolutely not. I can get behind a game that wants you to challenge yourself, so long as that challenge is reasonable. And even though the challenge is solved by merely getting more experience, the levels are still fun and I did enjoy playing it. The music is good, and as best as they could, they chose region-specific styled techno beats to match the levels, which was quite nice. The backgrounds mostly were also styled toward the region the levels were based off, and though simplistic, they were bright and colourful, some parts very futuristic with the light tunnels and stuff. There were some parts where a lighter background came in and it did make it a little confusing since it paled out where the platforms were ahead, but that was a minority of one level, I think. Overall, this game is like driving an F1 car over bamboo scaffolding. It's not all that sturdy and I'm not quite sure how it works sometimes. It's slightly impossible and yet also somehow manages to be possible even at the worst of times. But it's fast and it's fun and it sure is a challenge, and it's sometimes very, very frustrating, but when you succeed and make it through, it sure is rewarding. It's got good duration. It took me an hour to play through all the levels first time, and then I got another hour exploring all the variants of one of the levels, so there's plenty to play with. Plus, it's a beat your own score kind of thing, so replayability is there. All things included, I will give Soundslide a 7 out of 10.